All right, so we're looking at layout design tools, but let me just start out by saying that this is not a discussion of layout design in and of itself. The concepts and the ideas behind designing a layout, building the wireframes, those kinds of things. That's a very broad, a very big topic, and it's not something that we're going to try and tackle today. We're going to look specifically at those tools that we have within the FileMaker platform that allow us to go ahead and make those designs, those ideas that we've come up with, a reality. And so that's what we're going to go ahead and dig in here. Now I've got our sample file up, and we are already in our layout mode. So we can go ahead and take a look at what's going on. Now, like I said, to get into layout mode, there's a few different methods that you can use to do that. One is over here under your view menu. You can see we've got the typical 4 view options with layout mode being one of those. You also have the shortcut key, which is Command L, which is something that I use quite regularly. And then also you also have the ability over here, this button that's in the upper right corner. Right now we're in layout mode, so I can exit layout, but then I can also go back in and edit the layout. Now I have to admit that was added after I started using the platform, so I often forget that it is there, but if you're newer and happen to see that, that's exactly what that does. So we're in layout mode, and now the first step that we want to do here is to go ahead and then just select a new layout, and you find all this, the beginning of the layout set up here under the layout menu. Again, you also have some buttons here across the top that allow you to add a new layout if you want. Typically I'm always going up here to, again, the new layout, or Command N to get our new layout. Of course it'll be Control N if you're working on a Windows machine. So we'll go ahead and select that, and it brings up this wizard that allows us to go ahead and begin to set up our layout. Now you'll notice that we're able to select where we show the records from, as well as give the layout a name. Now for this particular example that we're going to be looking at today, we're going to go ahead and create some like a packing slip slash order kind of thing to look at some of the design tools that we have at our disposal here. So I'm going to go ahead and show records from the order. Now what you'll notice though is in that drop down is obviously I can pick a number of different things, and when you're building a layout in FileMaker, the context is very important. So you want to make sure that you have an understanding of what your relationship graph looks like, so that you're selecting the proper context for that particular layout. If you're building a data entry layout versus a printed form, you may need to switch the context from one base table, if you will, versus another because of how the data is going to be displayed, how the calculations are going to sum and those kinds of things. But for this quick example, we can go ahead and select the order, and then we're going to put in here our new packing slip layouts. All right, and then down here we have some other tools that we're able to use that give us the ability to kind of quickly hone in on what we want. Like I said, if we select computer, you can see there's some different ways. It's form, list, table, report. If we select the touch version, we get some that are specific to, iPad, iPhone, also a custom device if you have a different screen size. And then there's a few over here that you can select that are specifically for printing, and that helps you with some of that setup for, specific, label or envelope, that kind of thing. So we're going to go back, we're going to go ahead and select the computer, going to go ahead and select the form, and then with all of this information selected, we can click Finish. Now it's important to remember that if you've made a mistake during that walking through that wizard, once you get to this layout view here, pretty much everything that you've done there, you can change if you need to. Okay, and the way that you do that is, if you notice up here under our layout drop down, we have the list of layouts. There's our new layout that we're building. We have this little pencil here that brings up our layout setup, so we can even change where the records are shown from, that base table that I mentioned there. So we're able to change that if we need to. We can also change our views. Like I said, because I had selected a form view, it deselected all of these other options under the layout setup. But if I wanted to make it so that table view is once again available, I can check that box from here. Okay. Also get into the printing if this is a printed layout where you can adjust the number of columns and things like that. So like I said, pretty much everything that's done in that wizard, you're able to go into this layout setup, make the necessary tweaks and changes if you didn't get something quite right. It's not like you've got to go back and start all over from scratch, which is nice to not have to be able to do that. Okay, so here's our layout. Now, I already have these two side panels turned on, but you see there's two panes up here that, if you're opening FileMaker for the very first time, there's a good chance these are going to be turned off. And you'll notice that there's a pane over here on the left-hand side that we're just going to look at real quickly. The first one here is showing us the list of fields that are available, okay, that are in our current table, which again, we're dealing with the order. Now, because items are related, we're able to look and see, okay, this is the the bill to information if I needed to drill into that, or if I needed to get information on the specific item that appears on this order, I'm able to drill into that as well. And then what this does then is that very quickly is that I realize that, okay, if I'm setting this up, I want to go ahead and grab some fields. I hit the Shift key instead of the cap lock key, then I can just quickly go ahead, grab those fields, drag them over onto my layout. If I realize that I've forgotten one, like the zip code here, as I bring it over, you'll see that what FileMaker does is it gives me some tips there. You can see where I've got like the center line so that I know that I'm lined up. It's also checking the spacing with those ones on the side. And as I move it up and down, it's letting me know how it is in relationship to the other objects that are already on there, which again can be a very helpful tool and allow you to build your layouts a little bit quicker than if you were having to try to pick everything by pixel and get it all lined up and stuff. Right. So that is like I said, a very quick thing that we're able to do, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those just so that you can see what some of the other things. Now what you'll notice here is down in the lower corner, I'm just going to move this over, is that we also have some drag preferences. Like I said, the dragging of the fields over from our pane onto our layout is very helpful, but we also have some things here that are able to help us out. One is the field placement as to whether we're stacking them or setting them on the side, going side by side. Obviously, this is something you would probably change is if you were doing something in a report versus a form view. So what that looks like here is that I'm just going to go ahead and select city, state, and zip code. But by selecting that, and then you can see I can also select the label placement. So I can switch that to where it is over here on the top. And so now when I drag it over, obviously my rectangle that shows me where those fields are going to be is going to look a little different. And now when I drop them in, again, the field placement, the label placement, matches up what my selections are down here. So again, that's another area where it's able to help speed up, that layout building process. All right, so what else is over here on this left-hand pane? Not going to get too deeply into it, but so that you don't have to open up your database manager and get in to create a new field because you realized you forgot, that maybe the country, which is obviously not part of this list. You're able to click the button down here to create a new field, which is, a nice tool that's, very help quickly bounce back and forth and work on those things. But again, we're not going to worry about adding new fields today because we're here just talking about our layout tools. Okay, the other thing that's nice is that over in this pane, in addition to seeing the fields that we can add to our layout, we also get a list of all of the objects that are on the layout. Obviously, right now we're just seeing that there's three pieces of text, 3 fields. It's telling us what they are. And as you get a more developed, a more complex layout with lots of objects, possibly things that are overlaid on top of each other, this objects pane becomes very helpful in being able to pinpoint if you need to make a change to a button. You can filter out, you can see what those text items are, and then as you can see, as I highlight it over here, then it pulls it up and highlights it over there. Also, if I've got things that are stacked on top of each other, I'm able to hide it, which is a very helpful thing again. Now, obviously, when we switch over to browse mode, and we're going to go ahead and save the changes to that layout, you'll see that my label is still there. However, when I go back into my layout mode, it is still hidden, which I can see there, and then I can just go ahead and toggle that to where I'm back. Go ahead and show all. So you get the idea of what you're able to do with the objects. As we start building out this layout a little bit more, you'll be able to see a little bit more detail on how that comes in to be helpful for us. All right, so what we have here next is, let's go ahead and switch gears. And so there's actually 2 panes. There's this, the pane on the left, which is our, again, fields and objects. Add-ons is another topic for another day. But then over here on the right-hand side is the inspector panel. And you'll notice that there are 4 tabs within it. We've got our position, some of our alignment things that we've got going on over here, some sliding and visibility for printing. We're going to go skip over this second tab. This middle tab gives us a lot of the details as far as how things appear, and that's where we're going to spend some more of our time. And then you also have some options over here for when you're building your layout. All right, so let's hop back here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these. I'm going to go back to all of our address stuff. All right, and that's really not what I wanted, but that's okay. So we'll just get that. There we go. So pretty much made a mess of this layout. Let's go ahead and grab everything, moved over here a little bit. And we'll just make a real mess of things here. Okay. All right. So what are the tools that we have? Now, like I said, obviously up here at the top, we're getting some position information. We're also getting some size information. I typically like to work in points on my layout. But if you click here on the ruler, you can adjust. Also, if you click anywhere where it gives you a dimension or a unit of measure rather, you're able to click and make changes. So you can get it into that unit of measure that you like to work in. Again, down here some auto sizing, which we'll come back to in just a bit. But then there's some arrangement and alignment tools down here that we're able to use. Like I said, I made this layout very ugly on purpose. You see, so that we can align things, by the left edges, which obviously saves us some time. We can do right, we can do center. Now, obviously, you don't want to do top because it pulls everything up to the top, but luckily we have undo, So we're able to make changes there. Again, here's where we've got some of those auto alignment things that are working for us. One of the other things that we're able to do, and I'm just going to demonstrate this in the same way we can do the alignments, we also can kind of space things out. So whether you want to have a distribution horizontally or vertically, you're able to select that, and it'll just kind of average the space out. Another thing, and it will align the text, as you can see. So as we bring it up, so again, we're not having to use the cursor and move things around. We can quickly move things around. All right, and so things are starting to look a little bit better, right? Except I switched those names around, but we're not going to worry about that. And we also have some resize tools, okay? Because sometimes you realize, you know what? I'd really rather this be that wide to make sure that everybody can see the text, and I want everything to be the same, but I don't want to have to go through. Well, you can go down through. You can obviously resize the smallest, largest, smallest height, largest height, or you can resize to smallest width and height, or largest width and height. So some very helpful tools there. You're also able to group things on a layout. Like I said, I have the labels wrong, but you can see we kind of have the name here by itself, and then we have the group of address information that it probably makes sense to go ahead and put that into a group, which you can do with the buttons here. I use the shortcut key Command R, and now no matter what I grab in that field or in that grouping, everything is going to come along, and I'm not going to lose the spacing if I have something very specific that I've set up within that group. Okay, and then I can do the same thing here. We'll just go ahead over here, make that a group by clicking that button. And now that it's done something a little bit different here over on our objects, because you see now instead of seeing just the list of items, we can now see the groups of items. All right, and then I'm able to scroll down and expand or explode those out and expand them to see exactly what those items are. Now, once we have things over here, we're able to do a few more things with the objects. Like I said, we can hide the other objects. We can hide what's in front, hide what's in back. We can also specify an object name if we want to, because one of the script steps that we have access to is go to object, but we have to have that object be named. So that's where we could come and do that. Like I said, that's just for those group of items, but if I come into like this text box here, you'll notice that we've got a dash around the group, so I know what group I'm in, but then it has highlighted the specific object within that grouping that I'm working with. You see I have the same 4 options that I had with the group itself, but it's added a couple more that I'm able to get through here, which is for the conditional formatting of the object if I want to have it change color based on something in the record, as well as set any one of the object script triggers that I have access to for that. So like I said, that's the field. And then if we switch over here to the text, you'll see that I can specify the object name and do conditional formatting, but because it is text, there are no script triggers that apply specifically to text, so it doesn't give me the option. All right, so that's that on that tab. Down here we get into our sliding and visibility. That comes into play more for printed layouts, because if you have a description of an item, some descriptions may be very short because it's a very simple item. If you have something more detailed, you need more space, but you don't want to leave a lot of white space in a report if you're printing it out. Well, by going in, selecting that field, and then say, okay, I want you to slide up, and then also resize the enclosing part, you're able to have it collapse that white space so that when it prints, you're not killing trees and consuming all of that paper. So that's a good thing to just be aware of that you've got there. You also have the option here that if you want to, when you're building your layout, that you're also able to hide an object when you print it. Okay? Because you may want to put a button on a layout, but you don't want to have that button printed. This is where you would be able to go and to make that change. All right, so that's all some good stuff there on this first tab with the rulers. Like I said, we're going to skip over this second one and go to the third one. And this is where you can really start to then customize your layout. Like I said, in FileMaker, it's going to pick a default theme, either the default theme that you have for your solution, or one of its own themes. And that's where we come in up here. You can see that we've got what I've called the Lunch and Learn theme, which I'm pretty partial to. So we can go ahead and select that, and if I hit apply, then you can see the text has changed for me. Okay, it switched fonts, it switched colors. If I switch back to that theme, now we're back to what we were as the default. Okay. So over here, we're seeing it's telling us what the theme is, what the style is of that object, which is something that's been around for a little while and has become a great help when building layouts, and we're going to take a look at that here. And then we also have our ability to then go ahead and start optimizing colors, lines around the object, if they have corner radius, if they have inner shadow, outer shadow. Okay, obviously, font, both, is it bold, what the color is, the alignment of that text, something about the spacing, is it, right, center, left, is it top, middle, bottom. So we're able to control all of those things. Now, it's great that you're able to control all of those things, but you can lose a lot of time in a layout if you have to customize every single thing. And this is where this idea of themes comes in, and which is why you're probably going to want to take advantage of that. Okay, so for example, one of the things that I like to do, and just so that I don't have to keep double clicking into my objects, I'm going to go ahead and ungroup everything just for the sake of this. Is that one of the things that I like to do is give the user a visual clue as to what field is active when they're typing. And one of the common design patterns is you shade it a slightly different color. All right, I'm partial to a pale yellow myself, but everybody has their own choice. And so the way you're able to do that is that for this particular edit box, you'll see that we actually have 4 different states that we're able to take a look at. You'll see there's a normal state, a hover state, which is obviously when your mouse is over top of that particular object. This doesn't apply, obviously, if you're on an iOS device, because it's not going to detect whether your finger is hovering over it. But if you're on a desktop and there's a mouse involved, there's a hover state. Also have a pressed state, because you can, obviously buttons are going to be pressed, but you can also have a field become a button. So you get that option, and also the in focus. So we're just going to worry about the in focus here. And you'll notice it did change, that there does do a little bit with the line around it, but I want a little bit more of a clue. And that's where I'm able to go in here and say, I'm just going to go ahead and pick that color. Okay, not going to worry about making it any paler. We're just going to go ahead and click that. All right, so now if we save, and so now when I click in, you can see that these fields, which I did not adjust at all, are getting that blue line around it, but they're not getting that colorization of the background. Okay, so what is the easiest way to do that? Well, the easiest way to do that is, because we've added this styling to this object, is that rather than keep everything as its default, we can come up here to the style, and you'll notice that we have this little red down arrow because we have changed something about that particular style. Is that one of the options that we have is that we're now able to go ahead and save this as a new style. All right, so if I go ahead and hit save as new style, and I'm just going to put edit box. The whole naming scheme for custom styles and objects and things like that is a whole other discussion. So you'll see now that I have a custom style. It's told me that, okay, now I've got things that are not default with this particular theme. Okay, so I would want to change that. All right, but now, because I have that style, I can go ahead and select all of these other objects and then switching back to that second tab that we skipped over, this is giving me all of the object styles that have been created for an edit box. And I can come down here, and here's the one that I had created and added. And so now when we save our layout and go back into browse mode, is that now that style has been transferred to all 5 of those other objects, and I didn't have to go in and individually edit each one. So again, great time saver. So you definitely want to make use of the styles. Now obviously there is a fine line where you don't need to create a custom style for everything, because if you're taking one particular piece of text and making it bold on the layout for emphasis, do you need to create a custom style for that? Maybe you do, maybe not. Okay, it just, you don't want to have everything on your layout be custom style on top of your theme. You want to try to build as much of that into the theme as makes sense from a performance standpoint. Now, just to give you an idea, like I said, you're going to see as we click on items here what the styles are that are created for the particular theme. As you click on them, here's parts, there's text. We already looked at the edit box, but if you just want to see how many different styles you have to work with, you can just go ahead and click this show all, and it gives you an idea of the number of object styles that are defined for different things. Like here's showing you everything that's there for buttons. We've got tab panels, we've got portals, we've got web viewers. So all good stuff there. Let's see. Last thing that I want to touch on here is this field. Is obviously it shows you, this is the last tab of our right pane, and we've got the field information. We've also got our placeholder text if we want to use that, which can be a handy tool. Also the control style, but then you also have some behavior stuff where if you don't want the user to be in that particular field in browse mode, but you want them to be able to search on it or vice versa, you can control that with these checkboxes that are down here. You can control when things are being moved from one field to the next. Is it just the tab key, or is it also the return or enter key? Whether it's included in the quick find, that's where you can set that up here on this layout. The last one I just want to get into here is the data formatting, and let me go over here to the fields and find a number field. Let's go ahead and drop that over here so you can see, is that for data formatting, we have some options when it's a number as to whether it's as entered, whether we want to set it up as decimal or currency, percent, scientific notation. That's where you can control that. And then obviously as you select those things, then you're going to get some additional options where you can have a fixed number of decimals, and is there a symbol that appears either before or after? How does it show negatives? Are you going to show the thousand separator? So lots of things like that that allow you to really drill in and customize the look and feel of the layout, or of the field on that layout, to match what your design vision is. All right, so we are running short on time, but I still want to have a few more things to go over, so please, please stick with me. We talked about adding fields just by drawing the drag and drop here from our left pane. However, there are a number of objects that you can add, and those are the tools that you see up here in the top menu. All right, so we've talked about the text, but you can see we can add lines. You can see there's a number of different shapes that we're able to add: rectangle, rounded rectangle, or oval. And then again, you can control the color and the line and all of those kinds of things with it. We have here our field tool. This is our buttons, whether we want to add a button or a popover button to our layout. If we come over here, that is our button bar object, which is starting to become very much more popular, where a lot of developers are actually using button bars, even if they only need a single one, just because if you ever need to add a second button, now all of a sudden you have that tool where you just add a second one instead of having to swap things out. This is our tab controls, our slide control object if we wanted to add that. Here is our portal tool if we wanted to drill in and look deep down and see that related information, where obviously if we were going to look at the items that were on this order, we would want to go ahead and add a portal tool. We would just bring that down here, drop it in, say what we want to pull stuff from, which would be the items that are on that order. Okay, and then it actually asks me, okay, well, what do you want to add? Well, we probably want to have the quantity, the part number, description, price, and then probably the extended price. All right. And then it goes ahead and quickly adds that information there for us. So if we go ahead and save that, and you can see as we scroll through, we're looking at different information because these are different orders. And so everything is looking good. All right. All right, last couple objects that we want to cover is that there is a chart tool that you can add if you want to include charts on a layout, which this could be for a report, or even if you're building some kind of dashboard, you're able to pull charts in. And then another object that has been around since FileMaker 8.5, I believe it was, that gave us the web viewer, but has really gained a lot of popularity with FileMaker 19 because of now being able to run custom JavaScript code within the web viewer and extend the functionality of what FileMaker is able to do. So you'll see that a lot more web viewer use than what you once did. All right. All right, and that is a broad enough topic that's probably more than one additional lunch and learn. So we're not going to touch on it any more than that today, other than just to mention that that's where you find the tool, and that's what it allows you to do. All right, so we can add a field here. We can drag a field. You also have the ability to drag a field from here, or you can just drag it down. And then also you can add parts, which we didn't really get into a whole lot with the parts. We talked about the top navigation here. You can see we've got a body, but there are a number of other parts that you can add where you can just drag this tool down, or you can come over here to your layout menu and go into part setup, and that's where you can go ahead and create a number of different parts for your layout. Obviously this becomes more important as you're getting into building a report layout as to the sub summaries and making sure you've got the totals and everything adding up, and is there a title header versus just a regular header on all the other pages and things like that. That's where you can dive into this area here on your layout menu to get to all the part definitions. Okay. All right, and we've got one in there, and I think that takes care of it. Just to kind of give you an idea of what a finished layout could look like with all of the customizations and tweaks that are possible, is that we're just going to drop over here, go and save our changes, and then you can see here is a nicer looking layout. Like I said, we've got rounded corners and then not rounded corners to show that things are grouped together. Doing a little bit with the text colors and things like that to help emphasize some things, included some buttons and stuff like that. So we have all of these tools at our disposal. Just kind of wanted to quickly expose you to what those tools are as you go to take your designs and your wireframes a reality within FileMaker. All right, so let's see if we have any questions today. Let's see here. So there's a question here about naming conventions, and like I said, this is a little bit of a loaded topic just because there are no necessarily standards, but I will say and there's a couple areas here where you're probably going to want to use some type of naming convention. That would be is when you go over here to name your objects. Like my naming convention here, you'll see that if I click on this, it's pulling in all of that information there at the top, with the PO number, the ship date, and some information about where the shipment is going. Is that I have a prefix that I use, then typically an underscore, and then some type of descriptor. Now, obviously, your names do not have to be that, but the important thing is that you use some type of convention, just so that when you come back to this layout in a few weeks or 6 months, and you have to make a change, you kind of just understand what is going on. So that's the one area where I would recommend coming up with some type of naming convention would be for those objects, for those items that you need to make an object. The other area is for over here into your styles. Okay. Now this one here is let me go back to the right tool. Is showing a naming convention. This is not the naming convention that I typically use, but again, there's no right or wrong answer as far as a naming convention, as long as you're using something that makes sense to you and you're doing so consistently. So that's really all I can say about that. Okay, it looks like we have another question about just the object names, and that is, how often do you name objects? I will say, and this actually is a question that came up at our recent developer group meeting, is that I'm definitely falling in the same category, is that the majority of developers, we will name objects, but we're only going to name objects that we need to name. We're not going to go through and name everything on a layout, just because that creates a lot of overhead, and it's not where names are automatically assigned and we're just tweaking them. They do not have names, and so that's where you want to go through and just name the minimum, just because the whole idea is to be able to develop quickly. So just go ahead and name the stuff that has to have a name, and then just not worry about everything else. So hopefully that helps you there. Let's see. One more question. Well, not really a question, but just something I realized that I had failed to mention that's also under the layout tools, is that you can also set the tab order on your layout. This becomes very important as you get in and you start making adjustments to the layout. As you add fields, it's going to default to the tab order of how the objects were added to the layout. But as the user is using the layout and stepping through, you don't want to have the cursor jumping all over them. And so that's where you're able to go in from the layout menu, select the tab order. It's going to give you this little floating palette here, and then you can see that there's arrows and numbers to tell you what that tab order is. It looks like this particular layout I did not go through, that it probably makes sense that it should go from here to here to here. And you can see as I change the numbers, then the things that were named are also changing and updating. So it's not where you have to take a number out one place and then move it somewhere else. You're able to go ahead, and then once if you like all of that, and obviously you would just go ahead and click OK. All right, so I think that takes care of the questions. Just a reminder of some upcoming events here, so that you have that information. First, the next meeting of FM-Berg, which is the Pittsburgh FileMaker Developer Group, takes place on Wednesday, March 2nd at 6:30 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting, which means they'll have the option to attend in person down at Bakery Square in Pittsburgh, or you can join us remotely. For details about the meeting and to RSVP, you can visit our website at www.crossit.com. All right. Also, other thing is at noon on Wednesday, March 16th, we're going to be serving our next Lunch and Learn. We're going to continue our discussion of layout tools, and Todd is going to talk about slide control objects and one of the design benefits that he's found for using them in place of the traditional tab control. All right. So Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us today. If you like what you saw and heard, please click the thumbs up and share this video. If you haven't subscribed, we do ask if you would, and also hit the bell to get notified when things go live here. Some of the content presented as part of our Lunch and Learn series are the results of your questions. So if you have a suggestion for a future topic, or if a specific FileMaker problem has you stumped, please submit those topics and questions by emailing us at nutshell@crossit.com. Your idea or question may be the featured topic of a future Lunch and Learn. From all of us at Cross IT, we are glad to have served you. Have a great day.